Happy Wednesday to you, OCF. It's time for the Wednesday Word. And so today we're going to be talking about Psalm 16 because that's what I'm going to be preaching on Sunday. And the first time I read Psalm 16 or remember reading Psalm 16, it really stood out to me. I've never preached on it before, so I'm looking forward to doing that this week. But I thought maybe a helpful way to talk about it as we think about reading and studying and preaching Psalms is if you think of maybe everything together is much greater than the parts, and everything together gives sort of a tone that we don't see when we read the parts. Sometimes when we're reading Psalms or just scripture in general, we look at individual parts and we forget to put it back together into a large whole. Let me give you a couple examples of what I mean. If you think of somebody who's baking something, Abigail's been home from college on quarantine like all of us, and so the last couple of weeks she's baked one of my favorite things, these banana chocolate chip muffins. They're awesome. Now you take chocolate chips and you take bananas, and bananas are okay, chocolate chips are okay, but you put them together and then you put them with the rest of the ingredients, and I love the effect of the whole. The whole muffin is awesome. Or take somebody who's an artist, that they take a lot of different colors and they put those colors together and it creates this picture, this image, this just a beautiful sort of, wow, how did that all fit together to make that? And I think sometimes a good way to look at the Psalms is to back up and sort of see how all the parts come together. So for example, there's a tone set in Psalm 16, which I think is what makes it so attractive. It's why people love Psalm 16. And it's a very positive tone. The psalmist has taken a lot of positive words and put them together to create a very positive and uplifting and encouraging psalm. So for example, I wrote some up on the board up here. And so what you see, the first one, in verse 1, he talks about a refuge. In the second verse, he uses the word good. In the third verse, he uses the words excellent and delight. In verse 5, chosen portion. In verse 6, pleasant and beautiful. In verse 7, bless. In verse 8, not shaken. In verse 9, glad and rejoices. And then finally in verse 11, he says the path of joy, fullness of joy, pleasures forevermore. It's a very positive tone that's coming in Psalm 16. And what that positive tone is, there's only two negatives, but those negatives really pop in light of all of the positives in the psalm. Let me just read you the two negatives. One of them is in verse 4. The sorrows of those who run after another god shall multiply. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out or take their names on my list. As opposed to all of this, the one who chases after the other god is going to have great sorrows. They multiply. And then in verse 10, it says, for you will not abandon my soul to Sheol or let your Holy One see corruption. Like those are the two choices. In verse 1, take refuge in God and look at how your life is going to be characterized. Or chase after another god and your sorrows are going to be multiplied. And kind of the implicit implication is the one who's doing this will not be abandoned to Sheol, but the one who's chasing after other gods will be abandoned after Sheol. So as you read the Psalms, look for a tone that's set in the whole Psalm. And as you reflect and look upon Psalm 16, it'll actually be part of the daily reading this Saturday before our services on Sunday. I encourage you, just reflect. What's the tone of the Psalm I'm reading, and how might the contrast within the Psalm help me to understand what the psalmist was after when he put this beautiful poem together? See you Sunday.